fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then, so much the better for you people. I'm Acadia Einstein, and this is Strangeful Things.
Sheltering in place is not advised, as your survival cannot be ensured in that scenario.
Love has practically caused me to just get you destroyed.
Unsolved, unresolved, and super complicated.
So he's not very specific in that where he doesn't say, he just says he wants a jazz band playing. Like, did he expect everybody to get a jazz band in their house?
No, that's why we do the euphonium or the graphophone part. Why, that would be crazy.
Well, it's New Orleans. Doesn't every house come with a jazz band?
Yeah, it's like trying to find a country singer in Nashville.
Right.
Yeah, that's true. Welcome back, everyone, to Strangeful Things. I'm Acadia Einstein, here with beloved Grackles, Jen Sandwich, and Shooey, and we are going to take 8 eggs, some green peppers, and some murdering, and make you an entertainment omelet. I forgot to do that whole bit last time, and there was a huge outcry to bring it back.
Narrator, no, there wasn't.
and who the heck puts 8 eggs in an omelet? How much egg
Hungry
do you
people.
need?
8.
Wasn't there a giant in the golden goose or something that lived in the sky? That
I could eat 8 golden goose eggs. That were giant.
So I feel a Fred Flintstone joke coming on. And I think we're going to age ourselves.
That's true. I forgot about
a little too much here. Yeah.
Well, when we left off in Nolans, we had learned that there was someone skulking around town with a chisel, that he used to chisel into doors and then sneak into the house and wallop people in the dome with whatever he found laying around. Most times it was an axe, but once he had to use a lamp, and one time he used a straight razor to cut his victims' throats.
Ooh. Which, I will remind you, were the only people who died at the scene. The rest of the hard-headed folks either died later or, in some cases, not at all. You add a weakling killer to a tough population, you have a lot less death than you would otherwise.
Well, I'm wondering if he, wore himself out with all the chiseling before he got into the house. Wielding a chisel is hard work, from what I understand. I'd never know because I don't work. Sandwich, you planning on... But Sandwich, you just got a house. You planning on doing any chiseling?
Oh, no, I got it pre-chiseled, actually. I feel like if I need to chisel anything, then something important was missed during the inspection, unless I take up sculpturing, which is not out of the question.
That would be a bad inspection. Yeah, this door panel's all chiseled off. I need that fixed.
I love it!
Maybe we should add failed sculptor to the theories, but those are for later. For now, I guess we need to remember that after the murder of the elderly Joe Romano, the city was in full-fledged panic. Men were staying up all night with guns protecting their houses. Others started reporting finding axes in their backyards.
Which is more than likely, since it was determined last week that pretty much everyone in town had at least one indoor axe and one outdoor axe.
Well, it's a lot of chopping needs.
Well, didn't people heat their houses with chimneys and they had to chop wood to stay warm?
Yeah, but I don't know what I guess the indoor one would be for chopping up kindling. I don't know.
It's the fancy one. It's like, you don't want to bring the dirty outdoor axe inside. You want to keep the nice one inside with the polished handle.
Don't use the good axe, honey.
Yeah, that's the company axe. Maybe these reports were from the kind of axeless people that made the Axeman become the Lamp Man. It's important to remind everyone that many, though not all, of the victims to this point were Italian Americans. They had made a community in New Orleans, but since they were immigrants, they were, of course, of a generally lower class because people are garbage and treat immigrants like trash. Crime-wise, one would think that since they were Italian, they were all in the mafia. But you'd be wrong, you racist bastards. The Sicilians who came to New Orleans didn't bring the mafia, but they did bring a kind of street justice, the whole we'll take care of it ourselves kind of thing, called the vendetta.
Ooh.
According to Smithsonian Mag, so many shootings and knife fights occurred along Decatur Street that it was nicknamed Vendetta Alley.
I like it.
Now, this was decades before our story, but I'm including it for one very specific reason. Sandwich?
The fear of immigrant crime culminated in 1890 to 1891 with the murder of New Orleans Chief of Police David Hennessy. The popular official was met with a volley of shotgun fire as he arrived at his home on the night of October 15th, 1890. Mortally wounded, Hennessy insisted.
Oh, by the blessed mother, the Dago's got me.
Oh, no! I have images of Dago sandwiches in my head right now. It's like, and you're at home sitting on the toilet, and oh, the Dagos, they got me.
Oh, the Dago's got me.
Well, he'd previously been involved in a violent dispute between two Italian factions, the Provenzanos and the Matrangas. New Orleans found it easy to believe that Hennessy's murder was connected to the feud and that organized Italian criminal gangs, the press often referred to as the Mafia, were responsible. The police arrested a number of Sicilians who were to be tried in two groups. After an initial set of acquittals, the mob stormed the jail, murdering 11 of the accused.
Lovely.
They lynched some who'd been acquitted as well as some who had yet to be tried.
Oh, well,
Jesus
you don't want to
Christ.
waste time on a trial if you're going to lynch him anyway.
Right, just get it all out of the way.
God damn
Judge, jury, and executioner.
Fucking, ugh. Well, that's an interesting story, but I included it just so I could have tape of Shooey saying Dagos.
Oh, Lord be praised, the Dago's got me.
Oh my God.
In reality, there was another type of crime that the Axeman attacks were being attributed to called the Black Hand,
Ooh.
which was sort of a blackmail gang, but not really. They basically said, pay us money or we'll kick your ass, or if they were a plumber, they'd say, pay us the money or we'll kick your ass.
It's a me, a Mario.
These kinds of crimes continued in New Orleans until the time of the Axeman killings and would until the immigrants felt comfortable reporting things to the cops. We'll let you know as soon as that happens.
We're going to get killed. They're going to come from New York, and they're going to get you first, Shooey, because then they're going to get me on the way to Acadia.
That's true. They'll never find you. That's why you're moving.
Well, they just have to take the Long Island Railroad out to me, and
Just jump down the pipe, and they'll get to you through Lake Ronkonkoma.
It's all connected. Lake Ronkonkoma will get you.
Sandwich
Sandwich has to move to keep ahead of the mob. Everything is all falling apart. Because of my terrible Mario Brothers accent. All right. So, given the types of crimes ascribed to the Italian-American community, a lot of people wrote off the Axeman attacks as vendettas or Black Hand hits. But that didn't work for New Orleans detective John D'Antonio. He said that if these were vendetta hits, the victims would have been dead, as opposed to just whacked once in the noggin like most of the fucking Axeman attacks. He thought that the killings were the result of a Jekyll and Hyde type killer who was normal most of the time and then went nuts and killed without motive. He also thought they were probably related to a string of similar axings that took place in New Orleans in 1911.
Are we coming across a policeman that is almost competent? Because it's been like months since we've come across one like this.
It's funny that you say that because in one of the reports I read, he was retired. So I guess he only wised up after he wasn't an active cop. So, you might remember from last week that Sandwich is on the case of another killer, the so-called man from the train who whacked a family in Iowa.
That's right. And he did a hell of a lot more than that, but let's just say that Detective D'Antonio was probably right. At least that's what Detective Sandwich thinks.
Detective.
Sandwich.
It's a great name. I'm not, if I do say so.
You're a loose cannon, Sandwich. I can't have you.
The Maverick, Renegade.
Well, we'll wait for that story, but for now, the Axeman is a way cooler name than the man from the train, so we'll stick with it.
Yes.
Now, while World War I raged, the influenza epidemic killed millions, and the city of New Orleans in a panic because of the Axeman, all the hubbub seems to have worked for a while, because there were no more attacks in 1918 after Romano in August. As we learned last week, that fall was particularly bad for the flu, so maybe the Axeman caught it but didn't die. I think it's highly doubtful that he joined the army. He was dormant through the holidays as well. Yeah, can you imagine? Oh, I gotta serve my
I'm gonna go whack some Germans.
I'm gonna go whack the Kaiser in the head. Give me my chisel.
Expert badge and axe.
Yeah, right? He was dormant through the holidays as well and didn't turn up again until March 10th, 1919. And for this attack, we turn to the town of Gretna, which is on the other side of the river from the Big Easy. On the night in question, Italian grocer Orlando Giordano heard terrible screams coming from the house of his neighbors, the Cortimiglias, across the street. He rushed over to see what was wrong and was greeted with the horrible sight of Rosie Cortimiglia standing in the doorway. She was gushing blood from an axe wound in her head and was holding the lifeless body of her 2-year-old daughter.
God.
Oh, that's...
It sucks, right? The husband, Charles Cortimiglia, was on the floor bleeding from his own head chop.
Oof.
The Axeman had headed to the suburbs and gotten into his own old game. And as usual, Rosie and Charles lived through the fucking attack. But unfortunately, the 2-year-old had not had a chance. This was the first child victim, and the town was up in arms. But honestly, I just think that the guy was so spaghetti-armed that, like, a toddler was the best that he could kill on his good day.
Toddlers are really easy to kill.
Yes.
Yeah.
As soon as that skull finishes hardening, he didn't have a chance.
I was across the street at my neighbor's, and they have a 2-year-old, and he wanted to play with my phone, and I'm like, you can't fight.
This is true. We're not advocating toddler murder by any stretch.
Yeah. No,
But
not at all.
Don't try to fight them either. If they hand you the phone, you just pretend you're answering it.
Right.
Anyway.
But they are vicious. There's no doubt.
That's true. According to the Smithsonian, New Orleans Superintendent of Police Frank Mooney suspected that the Axeman was a murderous degenerate who gloats over blood, and that the Gretna killing was just another in the string. But the cops in Gretna had other ideas. And hey, what's the most unreliable testimony there is?
Eyewitness testimony?
Damn right. Have you guys ever been eyewitnesses and had to testify?
I did.
I have not.
Really?
What'd you have to do?
Was your
Anything
testimony accepted, Ms. Sandwich?
No, it wasn't. It wasn't that cool. A lady ran over a train track that wasn't there because the signs had been taken down. I had to go testify in a lawsuit.
Wow.
That was it.
Mine was, we were trying to escape from a Chinese restaurant called the Walk In.
Walk on in.
And we may or may not have had one of the people that work there on the front of the car who may or may not have fallen off and broken his arm and may or may not have figured out who we were from the license plate. But my testimony was so far fucking off from everybody else's in the entire case that neither the prosecution nor the defense wanted to use it.
Oh, wow. Oh, my God.
Oh, thanks for nothing.
So you ran over somebody with your car?
No, it wasn't my car. We didn't run over him. And other than that, that's pretty much what happened.
Okay, I guess we can't really believe you anyway, so.
Yeah, I know. You can't go by me.
It's a worthless story.
Yes. So, for some reason, the cops liked Orlando Giordano, the 69-year-old grocer, and his 17-year-old big galoot of a son, Frank. Nobody knows why, but they really had a hard-on for pinning the attack on them. They went so far as to arrest Rosie, the woman whose child died, and who had been clocked in the head with an axe, as a material witness. And they were super professional, asking her shit like, who hit you? Was it the Giordanos? Frank did it, didn't he? While she was still in her hospital bed.
Oh, jeez. You could arrest people to be a witness?
Yeah, you can arrest somebody to be a material witness. So, just keep your eyes shut. If you hear something going down, just run the other way.
I ain't seen nothing.
I don't want to get involved.
That's right. She went from the hospital to jail and was not let out until she signed an affidavit stating that it was indeed her neighbors who attacked her family and murdered her daughter. Jesus. Please note that one of the two was a sick old man and the other one was too big to fit through the chiseled off door panel in the kitchen. Oh, did I not mention there was a chiseled off door panel? Fucking cops.
So they were freed.
Not until after they were both convicted of murder.
Of course.
The father was sentenced to life in prison and the son to hang. And they weren't released until Rosie recanted because St. Joseph came to her in a dream and told her to.
Oh, and what if St. Joseph didn't come in her dream?
Well, that's why you got to count on St. Joseph.
Yeah, I guess, but that's a super... I know that patron saints get really specific, but that's like really specific.
Right.
The patron saint of the falsely accused.
Yeah, the patron saint of... perjury.
There might be one. There's like
I'm sure
there's
there
like
is.
a million of them.
There's one.
There's
for
ones for
everything.
like lost causes and stuff like that. And...
Really?
I need that.
Oh yeah.
One. Oh yeah.
Saint Anthony, I think, is lost causes.
No, he's lost items.
Oh, lost items.
Yeah,
that's right. You say, "Please, Saint Anthony, help me find my keys," because that's what saints do.
He's got
help you find your keys.
I think Saint Jude is the lost cause.
This sounds like magic to me. This sounds like some incantations.
Well, isn't religion kind of magic?
I guess. I mean, maybe I should start praying to saints and see if I can find that missing $1 million I was supposed to receive in the mail.
Well, it would be St. Jude that you pray to because he is the patron saint of the lost cause.
St. Jude Law?
Yes, St. Jude Law.
All right. Now we're talking.
So, now we come to my favorite part of this case, the letter. Now, you've heard a little bit of it in the opening of both shows, but now we get to hear the whole thing.
All right.
Notice how I said you get to, like it's a big treat for you, but whatever.
In full New Orleans accent.
That's right. I've been waiting for this.
You don't have to. You get to.
That's right.
It's a
privilege.
It was published in newspapers 3 days after the Cortimiglia murders and read as follows. Hot as hell, March 13th, 1919. Esteemed mortal of New Orleans, the Axeman. They have never caught me and they never will. They have never seen me, for I am invisible, even as the ether that surrounds your earth. I am not a human being, but a spirit and a demon from the hottest hell. I am what you Orleanians and your foolish police call the Axeman. When I see fit, I shall come and claim other victims. I alone know whom they shall be. I shall leave no clue except my bloody axe, besmeared with blood and brains of he whom I have sent below to keep me company. If you wish, you may tell the police to be careful not to rile me. Of course, I am a reasonable spirit. Shut up. A reasonable spirit. I take no offense at the way they have conducted their investigations in the past. In fact, they have been so utterly stupid as to not only amuse me, but His Satanic Majesty, Francis Joseph, etc. But tell them to beware. Let them not try to discover what I am, for it were better that they were never born than to incur the wrath of the Axeman. I don't think there is any need of such a warning, for I feel sure the police will always dodge me, as they have in the past. They are wise and know how to keep away from all harm. Undoubtedly, you Orleanians think of me as a most horrible murderer, which I am, but I could be much worse if I wanted to. If I wished, I could pay a visit to your city every night. At will, I could slay thousands of your best citizens, and the worst, for I am in close relationship with the Angel of Death. Now, be exact, at 12:15 earthly time on next Tuesday night.
Is that Eastern Daylight Time? Did we establish that?
It's earthly time. On next Tuesday night, I'm going to pass over New Orleans.
Like
in my
Santa.
Yes, like a Santa wielding an axe. In my infinite mercy, I'm going to make a little proposition to you people. Here it is. I am very fond of jazz music, and I swear by all the devils in the nether regions that every person shall be spared in whose home a jazz band is in full swing at the time I have just mentioned. If everyone has a jazz band going, well, then so much the better for you people. One thing is certain, and that is that some of your people who do not jazz it out on that specific Tuesday night, if there be any, will get the axe. Let me repeat that. Who do not jazz it out. Well, as I am cold and crave the warmth of my native Tartarus, and it is about time I leave your earthly home, I will cease my discourse, hoping that thou wilt publish this, that it may go well with thee. I have been and will be the most worst spirit that ever existed, either in fact or realm of fancy, the Axeman.
He was quite the wordsmith.
Doesn't he sound like an 8th grade kid who just discovered the goth scene?
Pretty much.
And listens to like Smashing Pumpkins from like the 90s. Despite all my rage, I'm just a rat in a cage.
Yes. And if everyone ain't listening to that CD, I'm going to egg their house.
Right. Jazz it.
Jazz it out.
Jazz
Jazz
it.
it out.
Jazz it.
That's
jazzing
not
it and jazzing it and jazzing it.
It sounds like an innuendo. To me.
Just jazz it. If you want your life to be spared, you better jazz it.
You got it, Daddy.
These letters sent a chill through the spine of the city, as I'm sure there were a ton of old crappers who neither wanted to jazz it or wanted to get blonged in the head with an axe. Or they didn't have a record player. How much would a Columbia, Regal, and Regina graphophone set you back if you got one out of the Sears catalog, Shooey?
Well, you can get the machine, the carrying case, 24 records, a case for 48 records for your growing collection, 500 advertising posters, and 1,000 tickets, because you were allowed to sell tickets back then and make money off of other people's music, not like today, for only $32.50.
Oh, so this was supposed to be you making money off the graphophone, playing it for a paying crowd.
Yep.
Do I get that right?
That's totally right. That's exactly what it was. And the deluxe version, which played the 10-inch records instead of the 7-inch ones, had a bigger horn that the sound came out of and was a whopping $52.50. And it said, and I quote, "No mistake is made in purchasing one of these splendid instruments for home entertainment. They possess every advantage of a perfect high-priced organ or piano, and please the finest vocal and instrumental selections in the hands of a beginner who has no musical experience."
That's fucking outstanding. I am sold. Especially if you get especially since you get the bigger horn like the old ladies hold up to their ear and go, "What do you say, Sonny?" What? Can you imagine?
This horn goes to 11.
Oh. But for real, I would have chipped in to go to a jazz joint to ensure that I don't get my dome caved in by a vengeful spirit who hates people who don't jazz it. And apparently,
very true.
Enough people jazzed it that night to keep the Axeman away. Just imagine all that jazzing all through the town.
That's a lot of jazzing.
With some grumpy old boomers just scowling and waiting for the knock on the head they assumed was coming. I hope nobody spent $50 on one of those graphophones, though. How much would that have been today?
Based on Shooey's calculations, that would be $850.
What?
Fuck. Maybe someone from Sears wrote the fucking letter.
This is...
We need to sell graphophones.
Yes, it's a marketing ploy. But maybe it's also like a jazz musician, like Jelly Roll Morton or something, who's just like, you know what? I'm going to never waste a crisis. I'm going to write this letter so that everybody starts listening to jazz and I'll get more gigs in New Orleans.
Everybody's going to jazz it.
That's why he gave him a little leeway, but not enough, because it was like the next Tuesday that he was going to do it, and it would take 6 to 8 weeks to deliver anything if they had gotten it from Sears.
I don't know. I mean, I guess it wasn't COVID back then, or I guess it wasn't the flu quite yet, where people were still leaving the house to go to Sears. Or
No, there were no Sears.
You had to order from a catalog?
It was just the catalog.
It was just the catalog.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah.
If you look up the old, they have them scanned in, like the original ones. They sold fucking everything. You could buy an actual house that they would send pre-built.
Yes,
yeah.
They've got a bunch of them up
awesome.
here. Yeah.
And they also just sold underwear for fat men.
At least when I was a kid growing up, they were nice enough to say husky.
Yeah, right. So, nobody was attacked on Jazz at Night, but Steve Boca, an Italian-American grocer, was sleeping on August 10th, 1919, when he was awoken by an axe being driven into his fucking noggin.
Oh.
He saw someone looming above him, but then he passed out. When he woke up, no shit, he ran outside to see what happened. And then noticed that his fucking skull was fractured. Jesus Christ.
Oh my
These
God.
people. well, I just ran it off. That's just...
Coach always said, just walk it off. Walk it off.
The only part that stung was when my brain was leaking on the pillow and it stuck to it when I stood up. Anyway, a panel from his back door had been chiseled off, too.
Well, there's something that Sears should have done. They should have sold chisel-proof doors.
Yeah, boom.
Yeah, they sold the doors and the chisels. They get you
Yeah,
coming and going. Now, the following month, on September 3rd, Sarah Lauman was discovered by worried neighbors who busted in her door lying in her bed with an axe wound and some missing teeth. This time, the window had been open, so the killer just came in that way.
You mean these other people had their windows shut in the summertime in New Orleans? That's pretty impressive. They have hard heads, but damn, it's hot.
Yeah, that's hot. Well, they were scared. They had Axeman fever.
Axeman fever.
Driving me crazy.
Been waiting. For all the hundreds of people that have no idea what we're talking about, there's an old person that does, so whatever. Now.
Are we talking about Pac-Man fever?
Oh, yes, we are.
Oh, we are.
We're old.
Oh, yes, we are.
Now, Lauman and Boca both lived, but the next victim would not be so lucky. Mike Pepitone got his on October 27, 1919. He was the father of 6 children, which seems weird since he and Mrs. Pepitone had separate rooms. His wife was awakened by a sound and went to Mike's room to see a large figure leaving and Mike dead of an axe to the skull.
Ugh.
And that's it. The Axeman never struck again in New Orleans. Anybody got any thoughts before we get to the theories?
Sears?
Sears.
That was it. It was one word. Sorry.
Sears?
Sears catalog. Selling axes and doors and chisels and gramophones and tickets.
Yeah, we did kind of. Well, the Axeman could have probably gotten his own axe from Sears instead of taking everybody else's, but whatever.
Well, that was the other thing. In his letter, he talks about, all I'm going to leave is my bloody axe. It was never his axe. It was always the person he whacks with its axe.
Because if you're wearing a suit and walking down the street with an axe over your shoulder, whistling on the way to someone's house in the middle of the night, you're going to
whistling a jazzy tune.
Jazzin it.
If you're jazzing it down Decatur Street, you're going to look suspicious. As for theories, there was one crime writer who said it was a guy named Joseph Momfrey. He based this on the fact that Pepitone's widow tracked him to California and killed him with vendetta style.
She did?
Damn.
Except later books could find no evidence to back this up, and there are about a bazillion men named Momfrey or Mumfrey in New Orleans.
Oh.
Got anything tantalizing based on your research of the other case, Jen?
Well, no, it gets a little serious because some people think that the case of the man from the train who murdered families all over the U.S., but started with the one in Iowa is the big one, that did the same thing. Used the axe that was at the house to kill everybody, and all of the victims were near train tracks. And the reason they think that some people think that it's not related to the Axeman in New Orleans is because there was a sexual element to the murders everywhere else. Then there was there was a sexual situation going on with children, and they would murder the whole family. And then do something with the kids, which they never really say what it is, but it's heavily implied that it's sexual by nature, and then killed the whole family. They used the blunt end of the axe, like the Axeman did in New Orleans.
The fucking Axeman, he might as well just use the handle, the noodle-armed fuck.
This guy was a lot better at whacking than the guy in New
that's
Orleans,
what I thought the big difference was.
Yeah.
It's like he decided to lift.
This guy was like the before character in those old Charles Atlas ads they used to have in comic books.
Yeah, the little skinny dude.
Yeah.
And then he boosted himself up into a bunch of trains and got all strong.
Yeah, it went nuts. But that's a whole different story, and some people think that they're related. Some people think they're the same person. Some people think they're not. But, everybody had an axe.
Yeah.
Well, what do you think?
I think they're not related.
Yeah.
But we'll have to talk about that sometime.
Mm-hmm.
About the Axeman, the other Axeman.
There's always somebody trying to connect stuff like that. Like there was that show where they tried to say that H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper.
Oh, yeah, and the only person that said that was like H.H.
was like his great-great-grandson or something. Yeah.
He's like, no, come on, buy my book.
I'm going to get a retired FBI agent.
Wait, that's kind of impossible, though, isn't it? I mean, H.H. Holmes was Jack the Ripper were like two different time frames, right?
No, they were
within a couple years of each other. It was Chicago
really?
was 93 and Ripper was what, like 88 or something like that?
Yeah, it's technically possible.
Yeah.
Like, I think that we all underestimate how many depraved killers there are out there because, as we all can tell, there are a lot of cops that just aren't that great.
Yep.
The majority of murderers that are out there are probably still out there.
Yep. Especially if they're killing the quote-unquote right people.
Yeah.
Fuckers.
There you go.
Well, that wraps up this week with the conclusion of the Axeman of New Orleans. If you want to tell me I got the research wrong, you can get me at Acadia on Twitter. And if you want to bitch at Shooey for saying Dago, then hit him up at Shooey
I'll say it again. The Dago's got me.
And if you want to talk about the show in general, it's at StrangefulPod on Twitter. And if you want to tell me what a good job of editing I did, it's at @JenSandwich on Twitter. And I also have an Instagram. I believe it is
Yes, it's Jen.
Yes, it is Jen.
Yeah, yes, it is Jen. That's me.
That is
Whatever.
you.
All right, well, have a good week, everybody. We'll see you next week.
See you soon.
Bye-bye.
I didn't come up with anything clever, so.
Well, I'm going to leave that in.
Walk in the door.
All right, do your bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Sleeping the frog is something when it's played by a band so grand. Well, any tune sounds like opera when it's played with harmony. But if you want to be classy, play me something that's jazzy. And you make a hit with me. Come on, everybody jazz it, all over town. We're doing, boy. All of the dance folks throughout the land are dancing and a prancing to a no jazz band. Oh, brother, what's it mean to? I'm simply wild about it 'cause it's something new. So everybody jazz